What's up, guys? This is Heat. I wanted to do another commentary video on racing, and this time it's going to be Endless Ledge. I've been doing some commentary videos that have gained some popularity. People seem to be enjoying them, maybe learning something from them. So I thought I would do one on Endless Ledge, which is my personal favorite race. And I think it's probably my best race, the one that I excel in the most, and I have pretty consistent results. So I think that I have a pretty firm understanding of this race type as a shadow. So some of the things that I'm going to go over is kiting and understanding monster AI and movement efficiency. I think this is probably one of the biggest things in Endless Ledge, and it's a little bit different than normal races, in my opinion. Also, what is good RNG? What's considered good RNG? Inventory management and prioritizing items. Setting pace. Setting pace is actually really prevalent in Endless Ledge, more so than other races. And analyzing some decisions, like why I do what I do, but like on a deeper level, and trying to explain like how quickly and why things happen the way they do and why I do them. So this is a really long race. It's 1 hour. I don't know if I'm gonna do commentary on the entire hour. I might just cut video to highlight some of the talking points that I want, but I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it goes. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what is good RNG, and how does it relate to me and my results in this race. So if we take a look at my results in this race, I pulled up every Endless Ledge for this season and for the blow grip season, and this was I only looked at the first page top 20, so I'm sure I died in some of them and I wasn't up there, but if I was alive, I wouldn't be past the top 20 just based on my performance. So if we look at this, we can see that in my head, I would say that probably hitting level 28 as a shadow for me is probably I had bad RNG and just wasn't playing well, or a combination of both. Now, average RNG, probably, if I look at this, it's 29 to level 30, right? Like if I hit 29 to level 30, that's probably average RNG. And good RNG is probably 31 to 32. And this particular video is the one where I hit level 32. And I did have pretty good RNG, even though it happened kind of mid to late race. So these are kind of my results, so you get a feel for my performance and how good I actually do, and where I stand in terms of like if I have good RNG, average RNG, and bad RNG. So what do I consider good RNG? I guess that's a good place to start. Well, for one is having good items, right? Like plus ones on your weapons, like +1 to cold, +1 to fire. That's pretty amazing. Having movement speed, having 2 quicksilvers. Those are pretty important in terms of items for what I consider good RNG. Other things like gems, like let's say beyond the starting gems that you get, you know, Magma Orb, Freeze Pulse, and Fire Trap. Let's say if you get some support gems like LMP, which I did in this race, I feel like LMP is actually really strong for Freeze Pulse. And then maybe another support gem would be faster casting, which I also got in this race, so that should give you some indication of me having good RNG. And then outside of support gems, maybe if you get Flame Dash, Firestorm, and Flame Totem, any of those gems would be considered pretty amazing in this race, in particular Flame Dash. I don't think I ever got Flame Dash or Flame Totem or Firestorm during this entire season. And if you probably got Firestorm and are a decent racer, decent to really good, you probably win like really easily because that's how good Firestorm is. The other aspect of good RNG is what kind of zones do you get? Okay, so I'll take the time to talk about zones a little bit and what that means. So every zone has applies a random combination of monster types to that zone. And so like good RNG on a zone is having monster types that are extremely easy to kill. So for example, like zombies or skeletons or humanoids that just like use arrows, or these crabs that I'm fighting in the video right now. So the more combination of easy monsters that you have, the better the RNG that you have, in my opinion. So bad RNG is getting really nasty and difficult mob types like Devourers, like Dischargers, like Chimeras that have like that implicit slow down on hit, right? And maybe early zones where you don't have resistances that can handle enemies that do heavy damage with elemental types like Dischargers, right? Like if you get Dischargers in the second and third zone, you probably can't even equip a ring that has like lightning res on it, right? So those are really bad types. Another good aspect of RNG is flasks and getting life flasks when you need them and appropriately at your level. So a big thing about Endless Ledge is that if you don't get an upgrade to a life flask for a long time, that can affect your pace and it can slow you down. So if you're getting life flasks around the level that you should be, this is a pretty significant advantage because it allows you to play more aggressive. So good RNG, what that essentially does is, in my mind, it kind of feeds into your ability to set pace in this race. And by setting pace, I mean like how fast do you clear a zone? How aggressive do you play in that zone? So the better your RNG is, in all the aspects that I was talking about good RNG, the faster you can play. And part of doing good in Endless Ledge is recognizing what kind of pace you can set at at where you stand with all your items and your play ability. So one thing that I do when I enter a zone is I kind of mentally create some sort of algorithm in my head that assigns a difficulty to that zone based on monsters and based on the items that I have, right? So right now in this zone, really the only kind of dangerous things are these leapers, and they're really not that bad. I have bugs, I have leapers, I have monkeys, I have skeletons. Maybe the banners can be dangerous because they do fire damage, and maybe if you get like a blue pack. So this zone is kind of, I would classify it as easy, right? So in my head, when I make this assessment based on what monsters and what items I currently have, then I adhere to like a decision, and that decision is to actually just play really aggressive or play safe, with some minor like alterations in my strategy depending on what the map provides for me. Like, is there like a shrine, is there like a totem with a blue pack by it that might be a little bit more dangerous or whatnot. But generally, this is a big aspect of Endless Ledge, is understanding what kind of pace you can set. I feel like a lot of racers get annoyed when they get like difficult monsters in like early zones, or just like a real bad combination of them, because they can't play as fast. But that's part of what Endless Ledge is assessing how fast you can play and making corrections to that. So the way I think about Endless Ledge is, okay, like I might get 3 or 4 zones back to back that are like really bad. But what I'm waiting for is that easy zone, right, to just crush and just go really fast and try to make up time there. Or in those dangerous zones, how can I play faster? And so like, how can I make decisions that are safe, that allow me to like bypass the zone a little bit like more efficiently? Because if you get a dangerous zone, sometimes it's good to sort of like run through it and not kill as much to get to another zone where you might have good RNG. Like in this zone right now, it's all right, right? I got some squids, but those revenants, those are really bad enemy types in my opinion, because they do a lot of damage. So one thing I recommend, right, in terms of setting pace is actually recognizing where you stand and try to play at that level. If you have an easy zone, change the way you play. If you have a difficult zone, change the way you play. Like when I get a difficult zone, I think about kill efficiency even more. Like, how can I kill more efficiently to get through this zone without wasting attacks, without wasting movement, so I can get through it faster and maybe hit an easier zone. So right now, if I'm in this particular zone, I'd probably assign it kind of average difficulty, mainly because for Shadow, and I would assume for other caster classes that use Fire Trap, enemies that do that have attacks that do like ground damage, like those I guess those Tempest attacks right there, they kill your Fire Trap, and anything that kills your Fire Trap will slow down your kill speed, because your Fire Trap is a big component to be able to do damage and move while doing damage at the same time. So any zone that has monsters like that is kind of annoying, and you have to change sort of what you're doing. Like, for example, you'll see me casting more magma orbs than I am fire traps. Like right there, I saw that there were spiders and there were there's no threat to my fire trap being killed, so I threw a fire trap. But you have to be able to make changes on the fly. This is a big thing on about Endless Ledge. So about prioritizing items, I feel like the most important thing that you can do when you get currency like transmutes or alks is, what I do first is I always try to get +1 on my scepters, and preferably you want a scepter, unless you find wands. Like, I'll pick up wands and I'll ID wands, but I'll never roll wands. So if I get lucky and get +1 on a wand, then I'll obviously use my currency on the other wand to try to roll it, because I'm going to be pigeonholed into wands, because a +1 is like really, really strong in this race. You really want that. But outside of that, you preferably want a scepter, because what scepters do is they give you elemental damage, and that applies to burn damage on the ground, right? So if you have like 10 and 10 from each scepter and you're dual wielding, you have 20%. But spell damage from a wand does not apply to that. It only applies to the initial hit. So that's a really good thing to aim for first. Secondly, what I would do is try to roll, once I get like +1 to cold or +1 to fire, or both, right? Like I try to roll both first, and then I try to roll movement speed on boots, and that's really important, because that's a big aspect of any race type. The faster you can move, the better. I guess this might be a good time to talk about kiting and understanding monster AI and movement efficiency, because probably this is the most important thing in my head about Endless Ledge. Like, if you are really good at understanding monster AI and kiting well in this race type, you can mitigate bad RNG, and it allows you just to play much faster and cleaner. So in this zone, and like how Endless Ledge usually works, is like it's pretty straightforward, right? like it's a straight line generally. Maybe zones starting like this, sometimes you'll get a big open area, but most of the time it's just straight. Now, the big thing about Endless Ledge is kiting. Usually you kite backwards, right? Like in a dangerous situation, most players' tendency is to kite back, right? It's never to kite forward. And geometrically speaking, right, if you kite back, it's just going to take more time for you to cover that ground moving back forward. So what you're going to see, like, and how I try to play Endless Ledge is I kite forward, like I kite to the side. I run by enemies, and I attack sideways or behind, because this always makes you move forward. And the only time I move back is if I see really, really dangerous situations, or that might be dangerous situations. You'll see me kite backwards. Other things you can do is kite sideways, like just move left or right as opposed to moving back. So if we look at this situation right here, I actually thought that was pretty dangerous. 2 Act 4 mobs, and then maybe some blue packs in the boss zone, right? So what I did is I went back to draw enemy AI towards me, and then use the open space to the right of that to just run by that zone because it's particularly dangerous. And then here, this is a good example of using a choke point, because what happens here is if you stand still, most enemies will come towards you, and what I created was like an artificial choke point. Even though like the environment, there wasn't a choke point in the environment, most enemies will funnel towards you. So that's a good way to sort of stand your ground and not lose any movement, like by kiting backwards. So this zone is pretty interesting. It's a pretty bad zone, actually. These chimeras are a pretty bad enemy type that you can get, and so are rock golems, in my opinion. Any enemy that is tankier than average, and especially if it's a blue pack, like rock golems that have elemental resist, those are really bad. So what you're going to see here is I'm probably going to try to play a little bit faster and skip a lot of enemies, because the zone is kind of bad, and I got these Maelstrom guys that also kill my fire traps. So you see me there kind of skip that pack. Like I didn't do a lot of killing. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get through the zone as fast as possible, because in my mind, it's not a good zone. And this is a good example of pace setting. Like this is even though this is not a good zone, it's not dangerous. So you can set a pace of moving fast and skipping mobs, as opposed to a zone that is very dangerous, where skipping mods could be detrimental because you don't know what's ahead, and they do a lot of damage, so you have to play slower and kind of kill more. One quick note that I want to talk about on Flasks is when I get a Flask upgrade, I always put it in my space trigger. So right now I have space and 2 as my life flasks. And the reason I always put the empty one in space is because naturally, just the way I play, I'm more inclined to just immediately hit 2 for life. Like that's just how it comes to me naturally. So you don't want to put the empty one in your most used life flask activation that you go to naturally, because if you put it in there, it won't trigger, right? Because it's empty. And then, so what I do is I always put it in my off one, in my space, which I hit with my thumb. And then when it fills up, I'll switch it out. So you can see me doing that throughout this whole video. But that's just a little bit of how I think about, right, what I'm doing, because in terms of efficiency and in terms of playing dangerous, like putting an empty flask in what I use the most and what my mind just goes to naturally, is kind of dangerous. Also, making the decision when to put in the flasks, right? Like you don't want to move into like a dangerous mob and try to do your flasks at the same time. Like I've seen many racers rip. I've seen Johnny Mock rip to Perpetus like the second time you encounter him, and some other unique monsters like. Because he was trying to switch in the boss zone, and he got caught in the trap and couldn't move and just like ripped. So you have to make a decision on when you switch flasks out. Don't do it in a dangerous position because you have time to do it outside of that. So this zone, understanding enemy AI, these dischargers, I think people are more scared of dischargers than they should be. So the way they work is they'll flicker strike onto you, and then they will do their discharge. However, the thing about dischargers is if you're really aggressive towards that enemy type, you can kind of kill them easily. So dischargers don't have a lot of life naturally, and what that means is you're able to stun them. So one thing is if you throw a fire trap and it flicker strikes onto you, if you immediately do a freeze pulse, you can probably almost take out like half its life and stun it and then immediately kill it afterwards. So unless they're probably blue packs, but that's one thing you'll see me do against dischargers, is you'll see me kind of play aggressive or try to skip them. Like that one right there, there's only 3 enemy types. You might as well go ahead and skip them. So here you can see that I didn't really care about them, and I just kind of face tank them because they're not, if you know what you're doing, they're not really that dangerous, and I have like okay resistances right now. So you also have to evaluate that, like how are your resistances. So I wanted to look at this this particular part right here because I thought it was a good example of sort of analyzing what's going on in the environment and making a kiting decision. So right here, I run upon these snakes, and then I see 2 totems and a blue pack. So the reason I didn't push forward to kite forward is because I don't really know what's going on there. 2 totems are kind of dangerous, so what you saw me do is choose to stand still and not give away ground, and try to like analyze where I can stand still the most without with being like the least put into a position of danger, right? So I'm always constantly thinking about that. Should I kite forward? Should I kite backwards? Should I hold my ground? Where should I hold my ground? Should I be more aggressive in this situation or in that situation? Now, obviously, there was like a substantial fizz or whatever totem that was, and then a slow totem. So, like, I also didn't know what was going on beyond that. So, like, if you kite forward, you can kite into another pack of blue chimeras with extra damage, and then you have the slow totem there. So, it's quite dangerous. Same here, as you can see in this position. I see that there's that totem and a blue pack, so I'm trying to kill the blue pack. You always want to kill blue packs because they give you more experience. But that's just something that you should think about at all times in Endless Ledge. In terms of skill tree, I like to pick up Sniper, because Sniper applies both to your Magma Orb and your Freeze Pulse, and it increases its range. I think it's pretty important to go down there as well because you also get some Dex, which is very important to be able to continually upgrade your fire trap when it levels, because if you don't get a Jade Amulet and you don't have Dex from the tree, that's a big disadvantage, and you probably won't be getting far with an under-leveled fire trap. At this point in the race, I got 2 Quicksilvers, and I usually tend to equip a chest piece because you mitigate the reduced movement speed from wearing a chest armor. So that's what's happening here. But I want to take a look at a decision that I made here that I thought is worth taking a look at and sort of analyzing. And it's this fight right here with the boss. So you can see it play out in real time here. I just killed those blues. But let's dig deep and see what was actually going on there. So if we pause the video right here, I want to take a look at what exactly is happening. And so to the right, I've already thrown a fire trap, and those enemies are probably going to die. So I've analyzed that. So if it gets extremely dangerous, I can actually kite backwards without being put in too much of a dangerous situation, because those enemies will be dead. And to the left, there might be a blue pack there beyond the boss, and the boss is there, so you don't want to run directly into the boss, because he can do shock damage to you and whatnot. But right now to the left also, you can actually see that there are some blobs emerging, and those are a blue pack. And if I return the video to normal, you'll see me react to them immediately, like it's an immediate reaction, and I kind of kite backwards a little bit. So what that allows me to do is, when I kite backwards, it allows me to give me like a second or two of like thought to see which path I can take that is the safest. And what happens is I kind of break through the middle. I go a little bit back and I break through the middle and circle down and around the boss instead of going straight, because if I would have went straight, I would have ran straight into the blobs. So let's speed it up and see what actually happens. There's a slight step back, and then there's me pushing through that middle part a little bit more to the right, just to play a little bit safer, and then me just killing this blue pack, because you should do that, and it's a pretty easy pack to kill. But that is, one analysis of sort of like how I think about things when I play. And that, like, I took some time talking about that, but that decision was like almost immediate. Like, so in order for you to like be a better player, you have to recognize dangerous situations very quickly, and be able to sort of calculate what decision you should make, whether you want it to be dangerous or whether you want it to be safe, and kind of weigh the pros and cons of those decisions. And that I did that within like a span of a second, because if you rewind it, you can see me immediately react to that blue mob spawning and making that decision. Like I already had figured out what was going on there, because visually I can see geometrically how the enemy mobs were separated and what the easiest and the most safest path is. Like my type of play style is I tend to play a little bit more on the safer side, so a lot of decisions that I make tend to fall onto the safe side. And the only time I play really, really aggressive is when I absolutely know, like, I have a high percentage of surviving in my head, like 90%, like almost, unless there's some weird coincidence of events that just fall into place that will rip me. Usually I make the right decision of playing aggressive. I want to take a look at this zone, because this zone is pretty interesting and there's a lot to talk about it in here. And the reason is because there are arc chicks, or the arc enemy types, in this zone. And in terms of enemy AI, what happens is that every enemy in my head have a proximity trigger, right? So if you enter that enemy's proximity zone, and I don't know if it's actually different from for different enemy types, I'm assuming it probably is, but I really can't confirm that in terms of programming. But once you enter that proximity trigger, the enemy will attack you, right? So for example, if you're fighting those titty chicks, right, they actually do a projectile attack. So if you enter the proximity of triggering their attack, they'll start attacking you, but if you keep moving, it'll completely miss, right? The difference with arc chicks is that arc is not like the projectile, it actually tracks. So you can't use movement and enemy like knowledge and AI to avoid that attack. So that enemy type is actually quite dangerous. So you'll see me play this zone a little bit safer. You'll see me hold my ground a little bit more, maybe not as aggressive. But in this case, right, those Vol skeletons or whatever, they're pretty easy. Same with little crabs there. And so you have to pick and choose, right? But in terms of pushing forward, it's quite dangerous, because if you push forward into a bunch of goats leaping on you, and then a bunch of dudes shield ramming you with another blue pack of art chicks, you might die. So in my mind, this zone is kind of dangerous to push forward. You can see me here standing kind of still, not really advancing, because it might be dangerous. So that's something to keep in mind, because their attacks actually are not like projectiles, and they track, so they're not dodgeable. That's why that enemy type is dangerous, and if you don't have resistances, they'll hurt even more. Not only that, but I'm pretty sure that Arc will also kill your fire traps, so that enemy is actually really bad in terms of endless ledge for a caster or a shadow. So when you see that enemy type, you should start altering the way you think about that zone and how you can play it better. One quick note on goats, and the best way to approach them, I think, is to be aggressive and run up in their face, because what this does is it triggers their melee attack, and therefore they don't leap on you, and they become a little bit more safe and not as dangerous. I want to take a look at one more analysis on a decision that I make. So let's take a look at what's going on here. So there are two circles. The circle on the right highlights that there's a rare enemy. And even though that enemy isn't really that dangerous, it's a crab, it's still rare, so that's something that you should keep in mind, because if you want to push forward, you're probably going to be going through that enemy, and it might have some dangerous mods on it. It might be volatile, flame blood, or something, and you might accidentally kill it with a huge spike of damage. The other circle is a haste totem, and you can actually see the haste buff on some of the enemies right now. So given that there's a rare and a haste totem there, and also because I know what enemy types are in this map, and they're kind of dangerous, right? There's the Archix and the shield charges. If I push forward, I risk having Archix beyond the top line point, right? That's why that line is there, because beyond that, I don't really know what's happening there. There could be a blue pack of chargers, a blue pack of Archix. And so if I push forward and want to kite forward, I might run into that, and those enemy types might get that buff and, you know, like shock me and perma-stun me into death. Now the line to the left, that's there because usually in this Sarn layout, there's a small crevice that accompanies a totem. And in that crevice, sometimes there are blue packs. And so I really don't know if there's a blue pack there. And if there is, it can make it even more dangerous. And lastly, the line behind me is just there because if I kite backwards, I will kite into some enemies. If I stand still, those enemies are still aggro towards me. So I want to keep in the back of my mind that those can still approach, but it's not really that dangerous. Those enemies aren't that dangerous because I just came from that area, and therefore I should have killed most of them. So what you'll more than likely see here is me kind of push forward to aggro some enemies to see what's there, and then kite back and try to kill the totem. So if we play it out from here, we'll see how what actually happened in the decision I actually made in this situation. So you'll see me here push forward a little bit, aggro some of the enemies, try to kill that totem, which I think I was successful in doing, but then kiting back because there were Archix there. And a blue pack. Fortunately, it wasn't too dangerous, but I had to play it a little bit on the safer side just in case. Also, that superior faster casting was a pretty ridiculous drop. The last thing I want to talk about is inventory management. So, an endless ledge, I feel that it's actually quite important to pick up blue items and to idea as much stuff as you can, because what you can do is you can store these items specifically for zones, right? So sometimes you'll see me have 2 or 3 pairs of boots in my inventory, and that's because one pair has fire res, one pair has lightning res, and then maybe 2 helms, one with, cold, one with fire. And the reason I save those is because if you enter a zone like this one that's very heavy in lightning damage, and a very dangerous source of lightning damage actually from those arc chicks, then you can just switch them out and equip them to make the zone a little bit safer. Same with rings, right? That's why rings are extremely important to hold on to, because those are a huge source of elemental resistances, and you can switch them out on the fly. Now here I did have a +1 scepter, and I kind of rolled it to with a jeweler's and then a chrome to be able to socket my fire trap and my magma orb. So that's pretty strong. I did end up getting see, that was a lot of damage taken, and that was a misplay because I didn't equip my fire ring, right? I could have equipped it, and I noticed that that's probably going to be dangerous, so I equipped the fire ring. Now, that's pretty much it about inventory management. Try to ID as many things as you can, and equip them appropriately depending on what's happening in the zone. And the more items that you have that are strong, right? Like if you have a pair of 20% fire res gloves and 15% lightning res gloves, keep those around, because that is a huge source of damage mitigation from those types. Now, I did end, since I have faster casting and LMP here, which is pretty crazy. I am going to get LMP in this race. What ended up happening is I got a 3-link dagger that I rolled +1 the cold on. So what's cool about daggers is you can dual wield a dagger and a scepter. So daggers are really, really worth picking up as another source of a possibility of getting +1. So I feel like some players don't ID daggers, but they're really important because you can get +1s and crazy flat elemental damage on them, and you can dual wield them with a scepter. But with a wand, right, the reason I don't like wands also is because you can't dual wield them with anything other than a wand, right? You can't do a wand and a scepter, you can't do a wand and a dagger, so it kind of limits your RNG to one item type. When you have more item types like daggers and scepters, right, you sort of mitigate bad RNG. So that's one thing to keep in mind about inventory management. But I think I hit most of what I wanted to talk about. This is a really long race, and I would more than likely just be repeating myself. So I'm going to cut it short here. I ended up placing number 2 overall, number 2 Shadow, level 32, which was my best performance in Endless Ledge this particular season. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I hope you guys learned something. Thanks for watching.